Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Xcession Everything Service Management podcast. A bit of a special session today as I'm joined as always by my colleague and co-host Sunil, but today's we would consider a special guest. We're joined by Mark Twomey, the CEO of Xcession. Mark, great to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Our pleasure. Good stuff. And what we're looking to do today is a little bit of a backwards view on 2024. Talk about some of the things that we've seen, some trends in the industry, and some predictions for the years and time ahead.
But Dan, you haven't mentioned that it's Christmas jumper edition, and Mark's come with his Santa hat on, and but Christmas hasn't reached the Gilby household yet.
No, absolutely. That's very negligent of me not to point that out. For those of you listening, you can also check out this podcast in video format on our YouTube channel if you would like to see the stunning jumper and, of course, Mark in his Christmas his Christmas attire. I am failing miserably in that vein, having searched my house all of last night trying to find something appropriate. But we're not here to talk about fashion. We're here to talk about something far more important, and that is service management.
So I shall kick off as per tradition with the first question. So we've seen lots and lots of chat in 2024, right? Particularly generative AI, right? I think every single toolset vendor out there has talked a lot about AI, has introduced capabilities, features into their product sets. But actually, if we look back at a large amount of the work that Xcession has done with our customers in 2024, there hasn't really been that much AI to talk about. Actually, a lot of the work has been focused really around some of the more traditional areas of transformation and improvement that you might have seen in service management tool sets and the way organizations use them. So I thought we'd start off with a bit of a talk about some of the customers and some of the things that we've done. So Mark, right, let's start off with MS Amlin. We had a couple of years ago a big transformation program there, but talk about perhaps what's happened in the last 12 months and some of the improvements that they've started to see.
Yeah, so over the last couple of years, we've been working with a really good client of ours called MS Amlin. They use ServiceNow as their core ITSM and ITOM platform. We've done a lot of work with them to kind of improve and transform the way that platform was implemented previously. We started to see the fruitions of that work from 2023 come to life in 2024. The key initiatives I think that a company like MS Amlin are on is they're on a digital transformation journey. Like a lot of companies, they work in the insurance industry, and they're having to provide better, faster, more resilient services to their clients, and moving to the cloud allows them to do that more, both from a software and a hosting perspective also. Also as a provider of IT services across their business, they have to be able to provide transparent costs, and they are utilizing information from their ITSM platform to be able to provide that information back to the business, right? They are also what I would say is constantly maturing, right? Yeah, and through the year we've seen them to improve on the work that was done in 2023, to deliver more features within the ITSM and ITOM platforms, to explore the capabilities of ServiceNow and what they have available to them more, to gain more value from that, and I suppose a bit of tooling consolidation also by using the ServiceNow platform for more than just ITSM and ITOM, right? Which they've also started to do. That's been through development of certain applications for certain business requirements, onboarding HR from a different system onto their case management that will now reside on ServiceNow. And obviously another key initiative from this year has been to implement business continuity management and operational resilience on the ServiceNow platform, which is using a lot of the really good information that we've built up in ServiceNow, particularly through the implementation of their CMDB and Discovery in 2023, and building on that. So a cornerstone of the work we've done this year with them has been building on the foundation work that was done in 2023, if that makes sense, right? Having a good quality CMDB, having Discovery, identifying your entire estate and the relationships around that, mapping application services, building out your service catalog model that's used and consumed by the business and by the various different legal entities. They've been the key initiatives for this year. It's been very, very interesting.
So there's a ton of work that's gone in there. But actually what you've described really maps quite well to, I guess, the bigger picture that the enterprise service management, the big enterprise service management toolset players, particularly ServiceNow, talk about, which is consolidation of lots of different business functions onto a single engine of work, right? Consolidation of a lot of data, right, into that single platform that allows you to make really informed decisions about how you move forward, whether it's around costs, whether it's around managing risk and compliance, whether it's around operational resilience, etc. Right? That's what you've talked about. There is a move onto that sort of platform approach, isn't it?
Yeah, and they're an example of an organization who's trying to use data more. Yeah, within a large application platform such as ServiceNow, you have a lot of data, right? But actually getting use from that data and being able to analyze that data and tell you what's going on and what's good and what's bad, what needs to be improved on, and making informed decisions based on that data, that's what we're starting to see more and more. And that's why, I suppose, over the last particularly 5 years or so, there's been a huge move across the industry to platforms, right? And having a platform where you have all your data consolidated on one platform and utilize across the business, across functions such as IT, HR, finance, etc. That whole ESM journey has been critical to drive, I suppose. Yeah, and we have other clients such as an NHS trust who are also on a similar journey where they want more than just an ITSM system. They want an ITSM and ITOM platform, but they want to expand that across the business and use that data. The predominant thing they want to do is use their data and you drive workflow from that data in an efficient manner, right? And having one platform that enables that is where everyone's going. Everyone talks about GenAI, but the fundamental problems of delivering service, maintaining service, being responsive, they haven't gone away.
Yeah, and it's having that confidence in the data to start with, right? Which I think is kind of pointed to the foundational aspects and of the work done prior. Now that that's in place, the foundations are solid. You can really build on that and start to trust and have confidence in the data to make those business decisions.
Knowing who you support and what you support is critical. And without having that data, it's very hard to do automations, to do all the funky stuff that drives better efficiencies and better customer experiences. But having that data is critical to drive that forward. Yeah.
It's really interesting, right? Because we've got a comparison point here. We've talked about MS Amlin, and you've mentioned the NHS Trust. The NHS Trust actually really is at the start in many ways of that transformation journey, isn't it? MS Amlin are not at the end point, but they're quite mature in terms of increasingly mature in terms of what they do. I guess the message there, though, to people listening is it's not too late, right? And actually there is an opportunity that presents every organization, I think, to go on this kind of journey, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. Like there's huge capabilities in these platforms now, right? But it requires also an ability to design it, manage it, support it, improve it, enhance it continually. Yeah. What we've noticed in some of our clients is that there's a greater hunger and need for change, if that makes sense, given to what's going on in their businesses from a real life perspective, but also with the amount of technology that's available to people to actually utilize and consume. Building efficiencies in that platform has been critical everywhere, really. Yeah.
So we've got one organization in the start of their journey, one that's gone quite a long way down, then we've got another one that's probably slap bang in the middle, I would say. And Dan, you've been working quite closely with the government legal department on their transformation.
Yeah, so that's a great point, and I think that's a really very well described point to where they are. So they have a very established ServiceNow practice in-house. They've recognized that perhaps it's not as optimum as it maybe could be. So we've been having some really interesting discussions with them about varying areas, things across the asset management side of things, maturing their CMDB capability there, the HR functionality within it. So the classic one, the joiners, movers and leavers, and in their case, returners and rejoiners. So there's a lot of complexity around how they handle that, and they're looking to streamline and optimize those specific processes. And, to your point, Mark, there's an appetite there to change things, but I think it's great that they reached out to Xcession, because they, recognize that they need some guidance along that part of the pathway that they're taking there. So certainly good to be working with them to look at that improvement initiative across all of the areas there. And already they're talking with us about various other areas. And a lot of it is talking more to the point around, we've done this in the past, but we recognize we need to get some of these fundamental things correct, get that foundation shored up, so that then the building work on top of that, to use a construction type analogy, but that is what it is. You're constructing a secure thing there, and take it forwards. So it's
what I think is really interesting.
I think you smacked hit the nail on the head, Sunil. They're not at the start of their journey. They're not at the end. And, I think everybody listening to this will appreciate there's never really an end in sight, because things could always be improved, but they are pretty much smack in the middle there.
I think what's really interesting there, what I've seen, is that how much momentum is starting to be built around some of the changes there. Now that there is when we first engaged with them, and I wouldn't mind us saying this, but there was a bit of trepidation. Right now, there is a bit of excitement, right, in terms of what might come over the coming years.
We've delivered on the things that we said we were going to deliver on. They're seeing the benefits from those other departments within that organization of taking notice and saying, we like what's happened there. How do we get on board? How can we get some of this positive change reflected in the areas that we're interested in and that matter to us? So, really, really good.
But the world is not all ServiceNow. No. There are some other vendors out there that we work with. So sorry, Mark, I interrupted you, but we're talking a little bit about Delaware as well.
I think what's interesting though is that with everyone that we're working with, their service management platforms are now being viewed as an enterprise application in that business, right? And that's more than just buying software, implementing it, and putting a couple of people to support it, right? You look at these platforms now, and I would be a big believer in this approach. Like I see this in some of our clients who are even more mature than the ones we've mentioned, whereby they have a platform, they have strategy and ownership of that platform, right? Whereby roadmaps are defined, planned out, 6, 12 months, 18 months in advance potentially, right? They have business engagement and delivery teams who are engaging with the stakeholders across the business to identify requirements, changes, opportunities, etc., that can be applied to that. They have a platform architecture and support team, so where the technical standards of that design and implementation are maintained, supported, handed over, transitioned correctly, and run in a very efficient manner, right? And then there's the innovation element of these enterprise applications, where people are looking at what's available from the vendor, what's coming out, looking at what their requirements are, identifying opportunities where potentially it's not exactly scripted by the vendor that you can do this, but we have this platform available to us where we can exploit it and use it. And that's a really kind of autonomous enterprise application, but you need a team and a will of people to be able to do that. But I think a lot of our clients are going down that route. We are in Xcession, for example, we would play certain roles in those kind of enterprise application management structures, sometimes referred to as the center of excellence in some places. And where we fit into those is we actually provide a lot of the delivery capabilities, engagement with the business, and the run and support models around that, plus also driving innovation where our clients are looking for potential answers to new solutions. And we're coming up and helping them to define those as they come along, understanding what the capabilities of the vendor are and what's on the vendor's roadmap, right? So it's very important, but it's to be successful with an ITSM and a platform like the likes of ServiceNow is one, but there are other platforms out there like this that we work with. You really have to have that capability in place, right? And it can be a joint effort between the likes of us, who are an implementation and support and advisory partner, along with your own people. Yeah, it's a very interesting model.
I wonder whether, and we want to look ahead a little bit in this conversation as well. But I wonder whether we're getting to a tipping point, right, in the enterprise service management world, where actually the value that you can start to drive out of an enterprise-wide platform justifies the investment of all of these capabilities and people and functions that you've just talked about, Mark.
Well, I suppose the challenge there is, and maybe a goal is to try and make that pay for itself. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, one of our clients uses that term quite a lot, right?
Mm.
And I would fully agree with him on that point, where you have to try and look to attain that goal, which is the investment we've made should be paying for itself in the outcomes that we've delivered. Yeah. And I don't see why you can't do that, right? Yeah. But you need a will, and you need exec sponsorship. Yeah. You need clear governance to execute on that. And you need to put a framework in place to be able to achieve that. It can't be just I've got an idea, I think we should do this now. Yeah. It needs to be far more structured than that. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Can we just very briefly, before we go on to the next question that I think Dan has lined up, just very quickly just talk about Delaware and Zurant. So I know that there are some challenges at the moment as we go through that implementation, but it might be interesting to just reflect on the fact that it's not only ServiceNow that can take people on a transformation journey, that there are other vendors out there as well that obviously we partner with. So maybe just, Mark, very quickly, just give us an overview of what's happening there.
So if you look at someone like Delaware, they are a very mature provider of implementing, enterprise software in across the globe, right? And their operating model is that they have over 5,000 staff. They are based in many countries. They have customers in many countries who have different languages that they support, et cetera. They want to use a platform that manages both internal and customer-facing managed services support, right? And to get to a platform that you can do that on, there isn't that many around the place, in my opinion, right? They have landed on Zurant, and they have been going through a process to migrate their internal support, both from IT, information security, but also they're looking at lines of business internally as well from an ESM perspective, plus also then having a customer-facing solution that then is fully integrated and doesn't require any complex integrations to other systems to maybe make that work, if that makes sense, right? So it aligns to your operating model, your customer base, meets the requirements of languages, translations, very, very autonomous. Yeah, it's quite interesting, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Mark. So as we've sort of touched on, we've talked a lot about ServiceNow. We've just mentioned Zurant. There are a lot of vendors out there. And again, one of the things we've seen over the past sort of 12, 18 months is there's been a lot of changes as well. Zurant, great example, formerly For Me, they went through a rebranding exercise in sort of Q3, Q2 2024. We've seen some new to the UK market, from our point of view, some entrants, so notably Effecte and also Servicely. Effecte is a Finnish organization. Had the pleasure of meeting with them at SITS earlier in 2024 as well, and had a look at Servicely, the AI from the ground up service management platform. And there's a plethora of others, certainly with the leader, ServiceNow. I think that's everybody kind of understands that ServiceNow is a leader in this space, and they've set themselves a target of becoming a $30 billion business, bigger than SAP. So with those kind of things going on, it's an ever-moving feast, right? Sort of let's have a bit of a chat about some of the other kind of trends we're seeing in the vendor space, in the mid-market, stepping away from the enterprise. So for those of you listening, you may already know that Xcession works with Jira Service Management, Zurant, Freshworks suite of products, and we consider those to be kind of high-end mid-market. Others of a similar ilk, things like Sunrise, Alemba, Servicely, perhaps, Effectday as well. They're all kind of in that space or wish to operate more in that space. What sort of advice would you give to the listeners there about how they would make a determination over choosing one versus the other? Is it the Vauxhall versus a Ford type conversation, or is there a little bit more to it than that?
I think there's a lot more to it than you have to be a bit more strategic in your decision in relation, no matter if you are in looking at a mid-market product, right? The mid-market is more competitive, in my opinion, than the enterprise market when it comes to IT management, right?
Certainly more players there, isn't there?
There is more players, but also then if there's more players, then you've got more choice, but you also have to make the right decisions for you as an organization, right? And I guess, when you're looking at mid-market software providers, a key thing for me would be, looking at their capabilities, they're looking at their roadmap, looking at how could they, how agile are they in relation to the changing technologies that we see in the world, but also to their customer requirements, right? And also, are you looking at it from a purely, fixing a certain problem question, which we do see some mid-market players fixing that problem quickly, or it could be transforming from, say, not being funny by this, but we see people changing from an email inbox to a digital service management system for that reason alone, right? Yeah, but you're not going to buy ServiceNow if you want to automate inbox service management, right? But you may do that with some other products that you've mentioned there, okay? But I think you have to take into account a lot of those requirements, but also where you're going to be in 2, 3, 4 years time, right? And also what you need to factor into account, in my opinion, is what the total cost of ownership for that application is going to be, because I gave a big talk there about what I think about an enterprise application function looks like to support a big platform that we talked about. But in a mid-market solution, you're not going to have those four pillars of support that I mentioned, right? Yeah. So you might need to look at it from a slightly different perspective. What I see people doing there is they have a problem, they want to fix it with a technology solution, they want to pay for the licenses, and they want to pay for the implementation, and they'll think about how to do the support. That's what I see in that, right? Yeah. And the vision around that isn't as clear as maybe the vision is for a bigger platform, and you're investing in that platform, and you're investing in a journey to execute on that, right? And knowing that you'll have the capabilities to rationalize tooling, knowing the capabilities that you have to do all this stuff that may pop up, right? There's a lot of those decisions that need to be made into that and to factor that in, right? But you have to look inside to yourself first of all and say, well, what am I trying to do here, right? Yeah. And we work with a university in the UK, and they've made a decision to go on a massive ESM journey, right? Where they have multiple areas of the business using the same platform, but they have segregated the data in the way it works. And that's where a product like Zurant is very, very good at scaling across the business like that. But their vision is to have one service management platform that's highly integrated to all their tooling and can meet the needs of all their business lines of business requirements, both from ITSM, but also from HR, finance, legal, facilities, procurement, you name it. Okay. Each of them have different requirements, but they will all have the features available to them. So there's the ability to execute on that, right? In a large, complex organization can be met by some mid-market products. We think Zurant is really, really good, especially from an ESM perspective in those areas. And we've seen huge success there, but there's a lot of factors involved. I give examples of the kind of sometimes the questions we get asked about, which is, what are we trying to achieve here? And when you're talking, sometimes you're talking about smaller problems to be fixed by teams as opposed to a wider organization problem, which is where platforms go in my opinion. Okay.
I think that's
sorry, go on, Matt.
Yeah, sorry, just going to talk right across you there, Sunil. But it's a brilliant point, right? That mid-market space, as we've seen from research we've done, there are a number of players out there. So just for any listeners out there, if you're kind of thinking, I can see that there's a lot of choice, but I'm not really sure about how best to proceed. We here at Xcession will be happy to have a conversation with you, share some of the insights, and maybe help you get the leg up on that and do some of the background work to help you make that informed decision. Sunil, sorry,
So I have one observation and then one sort of question, really, right? So one observation I would make is that if you're a buying organization in that mid-market or maybe small enterprise space, make sure that the vendor's target market is suitable to your organization. That you, in other words, you sit within their target market, because if you don't, you will find that their development roadmap does not align to the needs and demands of your organization. And I know that sounds, perhaps obvious, but actually most vendors will say that they do all things for all people.
That is the challenge, because that's what a vendor will tell you, that they will do all things for everyone, right?
But actually they don't, do they, Mark? And we have seen that over many years, right, where the development activities that the vendor goes down, the roadmap that they follow, starts to diverge, right, from the needs of a particular organization, and you find 3 or 6 years into that agreement, you're not in the right place, and you need to look elsewhere.
I think it's an interesting one. You don't want to be in a situation where you've invested in a certain piece of software, a certain application, platform, etc. And you find that 12, 18 months down the line, you've got a business problem you want to solve, and you have the platform to achieve it on, right? That's a tricky place to be, right? And then you end up having to compensate by potentially either customization or extension, etc. within that, right? But having something that's scalable to the needs of your organization, and aligned to where your organization is going, both from a size and the market that you're in and what you're trying to achieve from that platform, they're critical information to be added. It's a bit like the age-old thing where if you're sizing an organization structure in an organization, you should always double what you think you need now, right? Because that's the reality of what it is, right? And from a service management platform, you should be looking at something that's capable of meeting your needs, which is way more than your initial requirements may be.
Yes. It's like the opposite of packing for going on holiday.
It comes back to that total cost of ownership, because you've paid for the licensing, you've implemented the solution, and you've possibly invested in skills and staff and training.
Sorry, Dan. So I have a follow-on question to that, which was, so you have some vendors who have AI built in to their product. They will tell you, right? And then you have others that seem to be retrofitting, right, AI capabilities into their platform. Is that that's sort of how I see things? Do you think that's fair, Mark? Do you think, Dan? Do you think that that actually that some organizations are better placed, right, to offer value through AI-based solutions than others, or other vendors, I mean?
And I know we're going to talk about AI more broadly, but 2024 has been the year of AI, fair to say, with the kind of general acceptance and acknowledgement and awareness of it. And I think that it's still to be seen as to how organizations are going to be able to drive value from that from a service management perspective. There are some amazing use cases out there, but as we've talked about today, and we end up talking about quite a lot, you have to have that fundamental foundational, everything needs to be as it needs to be to build, to springboard onto that. But the vendors will likely tell you, we can get AI in, you should start using that functionality. And, a lot of it's keying off things like knowledge, for instance. So if you don't have a very well established or mature knowledge function or capability rather, then your AI is going to have very limited information to draw from and be able to present to end users or customers and the like. So very interesting. I mean, that's a view on it, a singular one. We could consume a podcast talking solely about AI and all the things around it, but
I think it's slightly different, in my opinion, guys, right? Because your question, Sunil, is around the fact that you think some platforms are built with AI in it and some are built with AI on it, if that makes sense, right?
Yes.
Well, the way I look at it, though, is like, about 2 years ago, ChatGPT came out, right? We didn't really live in the world of GenAI before that, right? Okay. So every software vendor, from even if you're using every product that you use now is trying to have AI built into it. Yeah, right. From a service management perspective, there's some really good analysis done by Gartner and Forrester about AI capabilities in ITSM and ESM tools, right? And a lot of focus on summarization, which I think is fantastic, right? And the speed of, and a lot of it's around efficiencies, really. It's all about efficiencies, right? Yeah. If you think about the time it could take you to read 50 work log entries in an incident ticket, you can summarize that now and have that available to you in 5 to 10 bullet points. Yeah, that makes a huge difference. So we see huge value in that, right? There's the ability to generate things like, you're going to talk about knowledge, but the ability to generate knowledge now, Dan, is much quicker than it was before, right? Yeah. In the same way that what I think really is that we're in the era. AI has been around for a couple of years, right? Yeah, GenAI, I mean, sorry. And we're now in the era of GenAI being embedded into software, right? And 2025 is where you start to see people start to develop use cases from the capabilities that exist about that being embedded, right? Microsoft Copilot is now becoming ubiquitous in the enterprise in work, because nearly everyone uses Office 365, and therefore Copilot will become the de facto GenAI platform that's built into both your laptop and to the software you use, right? And it's becoming more personalized, because I even use myself in relation to the information that's available to you that you've used before, or the emails that you have, or the calendar you have, etc. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the AI that's been built into service management platforms that we use and implement, right, follows a similar kind of vein of thought, which is it's to make data available in that platform in the context of how you need it, when you need it quicker, right? So things like proactive problem management, clustering of data to make that better, using GenAI from that data then to prompt you to say, this is what we think is where the problem is. Whereas before, if you think about problem management, right, I'll give you an example of where I see a use case of transformational value, is that we went through an era of problem management. People looked at categories, they looked at services, they looked at trends of data there. And they go, right, I've done half a day's work analyzing the last month's incidents. These are the top 5 problems, right? Now you can do that and have it available to you whenever you want it to have available to you, right? The next stage of that then is to actually automate the generation of those problems. And then, dare I say, guys, the word AI agent is going to become a bit more prevalent in 2025 and beyond, right? The 2 biggest platforms that I feel out there at the moment are Salesforce and ServiceNow, and they both are all over AI agents, right? And that will filter down to the mid-market, but the concept of the AI agent, and I suppose it's really building on the concept of hyper automation. Yeah, all right. With plugged in GenAI is where we're going to see a lot of changes, right? If you think of it too, also, guys, we've lived through. I've been doing this stuff way too long, same as you guys, right? But we've lived through an era of people trying to create an autonomous, automated service desk, right? Yeah. Some have done better than others at it, yeah. But that was using automation capabilities to automate various different repetitive tasks, right? Now what we're going to be seeing is that the AI agents will be probably doing some of those tasks, right? But there'll need to be a huge focus on the people element of GenAI, right? And the governance element of GenAI, right? I think that's where it's going to be huge. Like, yeah, we're working on a solution within Xcession where we can actually start to work with our clients to be able to guide them through some of these AI journeys that they're on, not just from a technology focus, but also from a people and a governance perspective also, yeah, right? And I think what you'll start to see is that maybe geopolitically you'll see different standards being set around AI than we have today, because it's such a new industry that maybe in Europe you find a lot more, a bit like what we have for doors coming in financial institutions. Those regulatory, we'll see more regulatory
controls around it.
Yep. Yeah, particularly in Europe, I would say, yeah, because there'll be probably a bit more thought applied to it there. Whereas in America, it'd be very much focused on let's adopt this and drive this, yeah, right. But I think in Europe, you might find different regulatory requirements being brought up, right? But it's going to change a lot of what we do, but the focus still has to be on good data, consuming that data. Governing how that GenAI consumes that data and presents it to the user, right? and AI has to give at least as good an answer as a human would have given, but should really be giving a better one. That's the way I look at it. That is, otherwise, what's the point, right? Okay.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I mean, that data point is the key thing there. You know, we talked about knowledge as an example, where from the information that's available to the AI, it can then create knowledge. So whether that be an incident resolution or some documentation that an engineer's written about how to fix a recurring issue and so on and so forth. But if that fundamental data for it to draw on isn't there, like if people are just putting in the tickets, like, yeah, I fixed it, you know, incident closed, then there's no valuable information there for an AI to draw from. So it's about having that fundamental foundational information in place of a good enough standard that then can train, you know, introduce that AI. So the question I kind of have, or, you know, if you could share your views on what, if anybody's thinking, right, we're at a stage now where we can really start to look to leverage GenAI and AI capabilities within our service management function or across our organization. But what are the things that we need to maybe tick off before we embark on either funding that or considering that in budgets or getting the work prepped to go ahead with that?
I would actually look at the whole people and governance side of things as part of that journey. Well, I think the danger with AI is that you focus on a technology fix for a certain problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you don't factor in the humans and how they interact with that and consume that, and then also the ability to govern and manage this. You know, the same, you know, governance we apply to information security is going to have to be applied to GenAI within any application that's used in the future. So there's a number of things here. I'm not saying you make it harder or more difficult, but it's a bit like when we put in ITSM systems 20 years ago, we looked at people, processes, and the technology available to us. Yeah, those fundamentals aren't going to change that much because we're going to have people. Yeah, we're going to have certain processes that may change based on these GenAI processes, but they're still fulfilling business processes. It's just that the workflow might not be done in the exact same way it was done before. Okay.
I have a view here, right, that at the moment GenAI is a system of interaction. Yeah, so it's about things like summarization or knowledge, right? The real questions around governance, around bias, around people will come about when it becomes a system of action. In other words, GenAI is starting to not just advise on how best to address a problem that a human then goes and does, but actually on how to, when the GenAI starts to make and enact decisions for the business, right, without that human involvement. And we're sort of getting, right, you know, if you look at event management and machine learning, right, that's been around for a long time, hasn't it?
Yep.
Right. But now we're starting to venture out of the data center or the cloud, right? And we're starting to venture now into business processes that impact on people and the way they work. And, you know, and that's going to be where it becomes very interesting, I think.
Yeah. The other thing I suppose is that the other problems is going to that come from this is, like, you know, it's a bit like when the internet came out. People that were selling servers made a fortune, right? I remember because I was around in the late 90s, right? And you couldn't sell sunboxes faster. They were going faster than children in a sweet shop, right? From an AI perspective, like, yeah, it's going to be quite similar because AI needs more compute power to be able to execute, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to see a kind of a joining up, I think, between technology and energy more and more, right? Because they believe, like, Goldman Sachs has some research out there in relation to data center consumptions, right? And that's going to continue to increase over the next 5 to 10 years, right? Yeah. So there's energy and autonomous energy and things like small modular reactors that are being, you know, designed. They'll all start to come together, like, yeah. So you'll find that energy and technology will become far more interlinked in the future because the consumption of this is going to be higher. Also, the management of the hardware that sits in the background will have to have a bit more AI built into it, right? So this is like being at the start of the internet in the late 90s, right? I feel it's exactly the same because it's actually going to change so much, right? we talk about it a bit more about, I think self-service in ITSM is going to be huge with GenAI, but like the we think of it from the bottom up, right? Yeah. The power, the energy consumption, the technology used to deliver this, they're going to be critical to all this. Like, yeah. So you'll see a lot of changes in that. All right. That's why I think bold statement. Yeah. You will see some of the technologies we use today will become very obsolete very quickly, in my opinion, in the next 5 years. Right. And you might think I'm crazy for saying that, but I think actually will be the case.
No, I don't think you're wrong at all. I think it'll be reined in somewhat by the sort of controls and governance aspects. I'm sure there'll be some brakes put on it by the EU and so forth, rightly or wrongly, however you want to view that. Leave a comment, let us know what you think.
I would say rightly.
But it's interesting you mentioned about like the data centers and that consumption of energy, because it seems like I'm always reading about another huge data center project. There's what's his name, Bezos is over in Saudi Arabia, has been recently talking with the king there, and I don't know, is it the king? Leave a comment, correct my geopolitical knowledge.
Crown
there
Prince.
Crown Prince, thank you. I knew it was regal.
Saudi Arabia then.
To build some huge data center with these things in mind,
But biggest wealth fund or investment fund in the world, Blackstone, can't remember.
BlackRock.
BlackRock have a huge, running it, I think, into the trillions investment in building physical data centers. They're building one in the northeast, of England, up near sort of Newcastle Tyneside, for exactly this, as Mark has said, right, for the compute to be able to facilitate GenAI. So, there is a whole industry tied, as you said, to energy.
That Goldman Sachs report said that by 2030, right, data centers will utilize 8% of US power compared to 3% in 2020.
Wow.
That's mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mad. Well, look, I think we've gone slightly off track from enterprise service management, but it's probably a good place to call it a day, isn't it?
I would say so. I think it's been a really interesting conversation, and but what is interesting, we did go slightly off of a tangent, but you can, if you've listened to the entire podcast, you can see how we got there. GenAI in service management is going to be big, but what is the wider picture? If you've enjoyed this session, leave a comment, let us know. If there's things you'd like to hear about, again, leave a comment, let us know. We'd love it if you subscribed, and thank you very much for listening in. All the best.
Thank you, Mark, for joining us.
And thank you, Mark, for joining us.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thanks.
Cheers, Mark. Bye.